And welcome into the Old Gabbox podcast again this week. Back from the U.S. Open in New York City, by the way, which was really cool. It was something I'd always wanted to do and accomplished it. Saw some great tennis. Saw a lot of celebrities: Roger Federer, Roger Goodell, John McEnroe, Patrick McEnroe, Caroline Wozniacki and her husband David Lee, who played basketball at the University of Florida. Good stuff in New York City, but glad to be back and excited about what's happening this Saturday night in Tuscaloosa. This is the Big Red Elephant breakdown of Alabama, South Florida. We're doing that every game week on the Old Gabbox podcast, and excited. Last week we were a winner, taking Alabama as they blew out Western Kentucky 1-0 against the spread, and this week we break down the game against South Florida. Oh, by the way, the game, which will kick off at 6:05 local time on Saturday night at Bryant-Denny Stadium at Nick Saban Field. That's a mouthful, right? Of course, they'll dedicate the field Saturday night. Coach Saban, Miss Terry, the family will be there. Much deserved. And excited about that. And I think that will add even more significance and more motivation for a football team where the vast majority of the guys on the team were recruited by Coach Saban, played for Coach Saban. Excited to still have Coach Saban around. And again, Coach Saban will be involved in game day on Saturday. He'll head back to Tuscaloosa for the big game again, 6:05 local time Saturday night. And it was interesting last week, as Coach Saban was at West Virginia, his home state, by the way, on game day. They said he took a private plane back to Tuscaloosa and then another private plane home to Jupiter on Sunday to make a tee time. So Coach is living the good life. It's good stuff. And oh, by the way, he did a great job there on game day. All right, again, a 31-point spread, Alabama over South Florida. The Bulls played Alabama tough a year ago, that crazy game in Tampa that was interrupted by just a deluge, a incredible rainstorm in that first half. It was a sloppy field. Alabama was trying to figure out who to play quarterback. Jalen Milroe didn't even take a snap in that game, wound up 17-3. All the negativity came out after that game, but in essence, that led to what was really a dramatic turnaround for Alabama. And as Coach Saban said, even last weekend game day, that team last year was the team he's most proud of in his career for the way they dealt with adversity early and then just kept improving each and every week to eventually make the playoffs and lose to the eventual national champions, Michigan, in overtime. But again, we digress. Let's concentrate on this game. 63-0 last week against Western Kentucky, and we can just flat out say South Florida has better talent than Western Kentucky. If you look at their roster top to bottom, a lot of Florida kids. They do have some transfers again from Florida. So the majority of their kids are Florida kids. You really have good athletes from the state of Florida. And this South Florida team will be much faster than Western Kentucky. And whereas the Alabama receivers, 8 different receivers caught passes last week, and they were just faster, more athletic, found gaps, explosive plays, one after another to build up that big lead. I do think that'll happen again, but I think South Florida is a more formidable opponent as Alabama takes them on at home on Saturday night. And that's what you want. You want to build. You have Western Kentucky. South Florida is clearly better than Western Kentucky. Wisconsin on the road will be better than the first two, and then ultimately that gets you to the big-time matchup coming up against Georgia in Tuscaloosa. But first things first, for South Florida, by the way, Byron Brown is the quarterback from last year. Big, strong kid, loves to run the football. He's a decent passer, probably needs to improve that completion percentage, mid-range passes. But all in all, last year in college football, there were 2 guys who threw for more than 3,000 and ran for more than 800 yards, and that was Jalen Daniels, our Heisman Trophy winner from LSU, now with the Washington Commanders, and Byron Brown. He's a good-looking quarterback, and I think that alone, he's better than Western Kentucky's quarterback. There's no question about it, and I think, again, great test for Alabama and their defense. So this would be a good thing. Kelly Joyner is the leading rusher for South Florida. Gained 78 yards last week as they blew out Bethune-Cookman 48-3. So it was strictly a scrimmage for them as well. Alice Golash is the head coach at South Florida. Has been very complimentary of Alabama, by the way. as well he should. He was the OC at Tennessee in 22. Remember the wild game where Tennessee finally beat Alabama after that long, frustrating losing streak? And that was that wild back and forth game. They beat Bryce Young and company. Alabama misses a field goal there at the end that would have tied it. And Goulash has done a nice job in a short period of time rebuilding a South Florida team that had completely bottomed out. But this guy, Alex, and his staff have gone out and done a nice job recruiting, getting some nice transfers. This is one of the upper echelon teams in the AAC, the American Athletic Conference. And I think they very well could win the conference, but I think they'll probably finish in the top 3 of the conference, go to a nice bowl game at the end of the year. Again, hung tough against Alabama, losing that 17-3. And here's the thing. As I talk to some of my people down in South Florida and people across the board picking this game, South Florida, some of their players, a lot of their fans are talking trash on social media. Listen, I don't get into that. I don't read all that stuff, but it's out there. And certainly the young people at Alabama on their roster see this. And again, it creates motivation for a team. If you're South Florida, you don't need to create motivation for Alabama. But I think that, and they'll say that wears off early in the game. I don't know. Listen, Alabama's at home. They're dedicating the field to Coach Saban. The crowd is in a celebratory mood. The weather's going to be good. It's going to rain Friday in central Alabama. It's going to be really nice for that 6:05 local time kickoff. And I just think everything kind of leans to another blowout by Alabama. Jalen Milroe, last week, by the way, I do work for CBS Sports HQ, and Jeremy St. Louis is one of the anchors on that show. That it's like a 4-hour show as they get you ready for all the games and recap a bunch of the games. And after last week, he was telling me Jalen Milroe is his guy. He feels Milroe is the leading candidate for the Heisman Trophy. And he said, listen, not just because of what he did against Western Kentucky, but from what he did at the end of last season and now segueing into this season, he just feels it's set up, as we talked about the schedule, for Milroe to be center stage and really have a lot of success. I don't think on Saturday night Jalen's going to have to throw more than 20 to 25 passes. If he throws that much, I think Alabama will be able to run the ball against South Florida. And again, you have explosive plays everywhere for Alabama. Ryan Williams, Coach Goulash was very complimentary of Ryan, and as he should be. I mean, this is a young guy who's going to be one of those top NFL draft picks in 3 seasons. He's big, he's strong, incredibly fast, elusive, great hands. It was all on display, number 2 last week. And I do think South Florida is going to play 2 deep, cover 2, to try to keep the lid on the Alabama offense. But that just creates lanes and open space in the zone, which they're going to run. And again, I think Alabama is just going to bust huge plays. And I think they will have a lead early in this game. Again, some of my guys who pick these games on various sites, they're telling me, Doug, be careful of the backdoor cover, 48-17, late touchdown. You get burned if you take Alabama and give a lot of points. A lot of people are leaning on that backdoor cover, but I just don't see it at home. I really don't. It's a 31-point spread. I think Alabama is going to jump out early and keep the pedal to the metal. I think the Alabama defense, the offense grabbed all the pub last week with 63 points, obviously. But remember, the defense pitched a shutout. Western Kentucky was outmanned. But I think the offense that South Florida is going to run, much like the Tennessee offense, I think Alabama is going to create turnovers, which will lead to big plays. And again, it gives me the great lean to give those points for Alabama to cover again. Jalen Shuler, by the way, is the leading tackler for South Florida, and unfortunately, he got banged up last week. He had a leg injury against Bethune-Cookman early in the game. You hate to lose your best guy in a meaningless game like that. He's questionable for this week's game against Alabama. Again, without Shuler playing at 100% or even playing at all, that is going to hurt South Florida. I don't think there's any question about that. Again, I really believe this has serious blowout written all over it. But I do give respect to South Florida because they are not a bad football team, but they're coming into a tough situation. I think Alabama, the majority of those kids were on the team last year. I think they will have revenge, redemption on their mind. It's a mentality, right? We're going to show these guys last year was a fluke. I think Alabama's offense is explosive, all capital letters with an exclamation point. Milroe, Williams, and a myriad of other young people are going to score in this game. I think Alabama goes 2-0 against the spread. I think they cover against Wisconsin on the road, and I think there's a potential for a 4-0 start against the spread as Georgia comes to town. Right now, a 4.5-point favorite over Alabama in Tuscaloosa. I mean, this is all good stuff, right? I can't wait to be there on Saturday night. Again, thanks to friends who are inviting us to the game on Saturday night. Look forward to going, being there as Coach Saban gets recognized and his name is put permanently on the field. I just think that is fantastic. The crowd is going to be all pumped up. The weather is going to be fantastic. And it all adds up, in my estimation, to a big-time Alabama victory. And that's the way I see it on the Big Red Elephant podcast, or at least the game plan, if you will, the breakdown right here on the old Gab Box podcast. And oh, by the way, for all of you who wanted to watch the game on DirecTV, sorry about that. ABC, ESPN, and DirecTV are butting heads. It seemingly happens every year about this time. Guys, I go Hulu. I'm just throwing it out there. Hulu. I know my son has Fubo. There's a lot of Apple TV, YouTube TV. There's a lot of platforms, guys. Remember, it's free for a month. You can always cancel it, but there's no need to worry about not having the game if you're staying at home on Saturday night. Anyway, can't wait. Look forward to it. And for all of you out there, thanks for watching, and roll tide.